Hey, Brandon.
Hi, Brandon.
Brandon.
Hey, my friend.
I wish I could be there to celebrate with you today. Congratulations on your freedom after this political persecution. I'm just so honored to be able to call a fighter like you friend.
My friend, congratulations. It is incredible because doesn't it feel like things are finally moving in the right direction? Donald Trump has just been inaugurated 3 days ago as our 47th president. And now here you are, absolutely deserving of every second of the rest of your life.
Congratulations. You've been through hell, but you came out of hell.
You made it. You made it. You survived.
Got to tell you, Matt and I are just so happy for you that this stage, this chapter is done with. We can move forward. We are so done with the horrific lawfare that has occurred to you and to so many people who we love.
I'm just here to wish you so well on no longer being a criminal. That's a splendid thing.
I was sitting at my kitchen table going through my mail pile of actual physical letters, which some people still write. And at the very bottom was a 4-page handwritten letter. It was from Brandon. And it was the smartest, first of all, beautifully written, most sincere, most deeply troubling thing I had read in a long time. And I immediately contacted him, I think that night.
It's disgusting what they've done to people, the harm they've inflicted on good Americans and their families.
And even though you had to go through, some of the trials of Job, right? I think God, he allows his kids that he loves and that he knows can handle it. He allows them to go through some trials, and you did.
That's just a sample of some of the heartwarming messages of love and congratulations and support for one of the most influential political activists of our time, Brandon Straka. Now, many of you have known Brandon over the years as the founder of the WalkAway movement. We devoted several videos years back during Trump's first term to Brandon's amazing work. But then in a flash, everything changed. Brandon was caught up in the J6 witch hunt hysteria by the Biden administration. And that dark period would redefine his life in unimaginably horrific ways for the next 4 years until January 20th and the return of the king. Brandon was once again able to breathe the free air. And now he is back and he is stronger than ever. And he's here with us today. Brandon, my friend, it is such an honor to have you here with us. Thank you so much for taking some time and being here with us.
Thanks for having me. I like, there's so many things I've forgotten. And you were just showing that clip of me on Fox and Friends with Ainsley. And I was like, oh my, I'm like looking at it like I'm watching a different person. I don't even remember.
It's like 2018, 2019. Yeah. Is that crazy?
Yeah. Wow.
It's a gang. Just while we're chatting, make sure to click on the link below. Check out how you can get involved at walkawaycampaign.com. We've got all the links to Brandon's social media down below. You're going to love it. We were talking before the interview, Brandon. I've really been looking forward to talking with you for some time. I've done a number of videos over the years on you and WalkAway. I really think you were ahead of the curve. You were ahead of your time. You embodied the rising new politics that was just getting started back during Trump's first term. In fact, the lack of the success of those politics, I think, are largely why he was so frustrated in that first term. But now they've finally taken over the nation, especially with the political realignment between Trump and RFK and Tulsi. And but what I mean here is that the old politics was marked by a horizontal divide, a divide between left versus right, conservative versus liberal, Republican versus Democrat, and all the wedge issues and cultural war issues that kept us all apart. But now we're seeing the rise of a new politics, again, that you've been on the cutting edge for years now with, that's moving away from that horizontal divide to a more vertical divide, the people versus the political class, the ruled versus the rulers, the ordinary American versus the oligarch. And the issues that define us now transcend the old culture war issues. So border security, economic security, cultural security, all of which have supermajority support, as it turns out. So I was fascinated by you going back to 2018 and how you and the WalkAway movement uniquely and originally embodied very early on that transition from horizontal to vertical politics. So you're way ahead of the curve. Can you give everyone just a quick backstory of who you are and how you became what many believe to be one of the most important political activists of our time?
It's very nice to hear. Well, so I started out, I started WalkAway in 2018. So previous to 2018, I was a pretty apolitical guy. I mean, really the only interest I had in politics was, LGBT rights issues, gay rights issues. I'm a gay man who was a lifelong Democrat, two-time Obama voter, straight ticket Democrat Party voter, and I voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. And it really never occurred to me to question the media that I had been trusting my whole life. And, that was CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, etc. And they told me that Hillary Clinton was going to win in a landslide, that Donald Trump was, the most bigoted, evil person who would ever run for president, and that he was going to lose in like the greatest political disaster that we've ever seen. And obviously that's not how 2016 turned out. So when he won the election, I, like just about everybody on the left, went into a complete emotional, psychological tailspin because I was scared, I was angry, I was confused, and I felt betrayed, and I felt I couldn't understand what all of this meant. I mean, first of all, I didn't understand how he could win, but second of all, I didn't understand how the media that I trusted could possibly get this so wrong. And so I went on a journey at the time to try to understand, why would anyone vote for him? And why did all of these media outlets that I had been trusting not see what was coming? And there was this very pivotal moment in that journey that I was taking to understand it, where I went on social media and I posted that I would never be able to understand how anyone could possibly vote for a man who was capable of mocking a reporter's disability in front of a cheering crowd. And that's when somebody reached out to me privately and sent me a link to a video that was called "Debunking that Trump Mocked the Disabled Reporter," which showed very clearly and compellingly that this was like a voice and a bit and a gesture that Donald Trump has done his whole life when he was imitating anybody who was flailing because they were caught in a lie. He was not making fun of that reporter's disability. And suddenly I started to see very clearly that the media that I had been trusting was capable of manipulating moments, taking something out of context, spinning something, creating a soundbite, and creating their own narrative behind it. And I had never seen it before. And at that moment, I saw it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
You can't unsee it.
Yeah. And so that began, it wasn't like instantaneous, but that began, the light bulb going on, and what ultimately became a months-long journey of research that led to me walking away from the Democratic Party and walking away from liberalism and walking away from the left-wing media. And the final piece of this is that I think because I'm a gay man, and it wasn't just that I saw all of that, I also saw really clearly for the first time that if you are Black or brown or LGBT or a woman or a minority class person of any kind, they are intentionally manipulating us, deceiving us, misleading us through a steady diet of fear-mongering and deception. And that made me so angry when I saw it. And that's what led me to make that 6-minute video that I put out in 2018 and start the WalkAway campaign.
Wow. And then you are embodying this new politics of the people versus the political class in an even more pernicious way, in that you became the target of that corrupt political class. Isn't that interesting? Boy, they'll say they're the savior of all these minority groups, but if anyone in that group betrays them, all bets are off. They're going to do everything they can to crush you, and that's what they did. They exploited J6 in what was a radically pernicious persecution of you. Can you share with us what happened on J6 and what the political class did to you?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important for people to understand before I explain that how big WalkAway became by that point, because by January 6th of 2021, I had created a Facebook group called #WalkAway campaign. And I basically said to people, look, if anyone out there is feeling the same way I'm feeling, share your own testimonial video, share your story. And by January 6th of 2021, we had grown to over 511,000 people who had joined the group.
Wow.
And we had tens of thousands of videos and written testimonials.
Wow.
And I mean, we were like being talked about everywhere. I
Right.
mean, like WalkAway, like the country had like WalkAway mania. And so I was very much a target. And it's interesting because I've always known and recognized that I'm not the biggest fish in the political movement. Certainly, you look at Charlie Kirk or Ben Shapiro or what, there are people much bigger than I am, but they don't get targeted the way that I have. And
Right.
I think the reason why is because I wasn't just going out and espousing a conservative message. I was getting people to leave the Democratic Party and change
Right.
their mind. And so
Right.
I think these people hated me in a way that they don't hate some of those other people who are bigger than I am.
Right.
And so on January 6th, I went to the Capitol that day because I was asked to be a scheduled speaker at a permitted event on Capitol grounds. And when I started to arrive to do my speaking engagement, I began getting text messages from people who are watching around the country on television saying, hey, we're hearing something's happening at the Capitol. Like people are going inside the building. The news is saying that there's some disruption, something's going on. And since I don't believe the news or trust anything that they say, I thought to myself, well, I'm right here. I might as well walk up there and see if what I'm hearing is true. So I started shooting a video because my intention was, if something is happening, I want to capture it for myself. And then I have a very large following on social media. If the media's basically saying, that there's like this riot happening or whatever it is that they want to call it, I'll see what the truth of the matter is, and then I'll post it on social media. So I started shooting a video, and I walked up to the building. I was on the east side of the building, which is the opposite side of where the riot had occurred on the west side of the building. On the side of the building I was on, people were very calm. Nobody was rioting. Nobody was breaking anything. Nobody was fighting. In fact, there were no police officers on the east side of the building when I was there. Only one that later appeared in my video, which we'll get into in a minute. But I walked up to there were no closed barricades. There was no, I didn't have to illegally cross over a barricade. They were open. And there were just thousands of people standing on the east side ground. So I literally walked into a crowd of thousands of people. And then when I got there, there was a man standing on the top of the stairs on the Capitol. And he was shouting like this. He said, they've opened the doors. They're letting us in. We're going inside. We're going inside. So I walked up to the top of the Capitol stairs on the east side. And when I got there, sure enough, the double doors, the Columbus doors on the east side of the building were both wide open. And there was a crowd of several hundred people at the top of the stairs. Some of them were trying to push their way inside, and most of them were just like me shooting a video. And so I held my camera fully above my head and I pointed it down because there were so many people in front of me that I couldn't really see what was happening. The doors were about 35 feet away. And I stood outside of the building for 8 minutes shooting a video. And after 8 minutes, a man came out of the building, got on a bullhorn, and he shouted, they've cleared Congress. Everyone left the building. Move out, move out. And I immediately turned around, walked the other direction. I even told the people behind me, they're saying to move out. You need to go this way. And then I went down the stairs and back out onto the outer grounds. And I stayed and I shot about 13 more videos doing street interviews with people outside of the Capitol. I never entered the Capitol on January 6th. I never engaged in any violence, vandalism, theft, or destruction, and I didn't even witness any. I didn't see anybody committing violence or destruction or vandalism. I uploaded that video that I shot to Twitter, and 2.5 weeks later, a team of FBI agents in tactical gear stormed my apartment at dawn, raided my apartment, got me out of bed, put me in handcuffs, told me I was facing multiple felony charges for what I had done on January 6th, began stripping my apartment of my computers, my hard drives, my thumb drives, my camera equipment, clothing, etc., put me in handcuffs and took me to jail. And I sat in jail for 2.5 days in 24-hour lockdown before I was released. And then that's when I began to learn what I was being accused of.
What were the felonies? What were they? What could you have possibly done?
What a wonderful question. I sat in that jail cell for 2.5 days asking that very same question over and over again for 2.5 days, wondering, what am I being accused of? This makes no sense. And so when I was released, I got to meet with my attorney, and my attorney said, well, they're charging you with a felony of knowingly occupying restricted grounds. So in other words, trespassing on the Capitol grounds, they're charging you with a felony, and not just a felony, but they're saying that you knowingly occupied restricted grounds. I walked up an open sidewalk with no barricades into a crowd of thousands of people. There were no signs saying you're not allowed to be there. There were no police officers there. The barricades were not closed. There was literally no way a person could possibly know they're not allowed to be there. And they charged me with a felony for being outside of the building on the grounds in a crowd of thousands of people. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just saying it's insane. It's what people do every day in the Capitol. I mean, for heaven's sakes, it's insane. Yep. And this, I'm just curious, Brent, this pernicious pattern of lawfare, this obvious weaponized legalism where the laws is deliberately used and manipulated as a tool of political oppression. We're talking this, I mean, this would be an insult to third world nations at this point. What's so astonishing to me with how systemic this is, I mean, you would think a judge or someone at the DOJ would stand up against this at some point in the prolonged ordeal, but nothing. No one came to your defense.
No. It's funny what you're saying. So I didn't know any J6ers when this happened to me, but now I know probably 100. And a lot of these people have become close friends because we all went through a similar experience together.
Yeah.
And even though we didn't know each other at the time, it's funny now that we do know each other and we've talked about what we went through. We all went through almost identical patterns of like the trajectory of how our cases went, but also like the thought process. And we've all shared this memory that early on. So when we all got raided and arrested and thrown in jail, all of us initially had this thought like, oh, this is a misunderstanding. And once I have the opportunity to explain to them, like, look, I didn't do it. I didn't fight with a police officer. I didn't break a window. I didn't whatever, that this will all be resolved. What we didn't know at the time was that they don't care what is true and what's not true.
Right.
They intentionally want this to be the worst story it can possibly be. So they don't care that you didn't do anything. They're intentionally lying about the facts of the case because they want to create the worst story possible for Donald Trump and his supporters. And they want to make sure this comes across as an insurrection so that he can't run for office again. But they had a vested interest in coming after me because of WalkAway. So despite the fact that I didn't even go in the building and I didn't do anything, they needed to create the worst story they could possibly create so that the founder of the WalkAway movement came across as a violent lunatic, in the press.
Right. So, well, the media just parrots the narrative. It's not news; it's narrative, as you pointed out earlier. Yeah. Well, that's what I found so fascinating about your story. Is, I mean, you're embodying what you saw. You're embodying this at every level, it seems to me, and you're getting into this notion that they ran a whole campaign of stigmatization against you as well. They tried to ruin your reputation, and they were absolutely brutal.
I've never seen anything like it happen in this country before. So they gave me a second felony that they called impeding law enforcement. Now, this was very important to them because, trespassing on Capitol grounds. I mean, I think people would be like, seriously, are you kidding? But they really needed something that would make me appear to be violent and unlawful and anti-police. And so they charged me with a felony that they called impeding law enforcement. And I said to my attorney, what are they talking about? And my attorney said, well, in your video, there's this moment where for about 45 seconds, one Capitol police officer comes outside of the building. And when he comes out of the building, he's holding a plastic shield above his head like a surfboard, and somebody grabs it away from him. And when the person grabs it away from him, you could hear several voices in the crowd of hundreds of people shouting, take it, take the shield, take the shield. He said, well, the FBI is saying that that's you, that you were the one shouting to take the shield, and they charged you with a felony. And in the charging document against me, they just presented that as fact. They
How
said
could they even possibly prove it?
they couldn't.
Yeah, it's insane. It's
But they don't
empirically
need to prove it.
vacuous.
But they
It's
don't
just-
need to prove it.
Right.
They don't
right,
need to prove
right.
it because my only option is to go to trial in Washington, D.C.
In DC, exactly, which is a kangaroo court. Yeah, yeah,
Correct.
yeah. They thought it all the way through. So Trump returns to office noon, January 20th. How did you find out you were pardoned, and what did it feel like? Give us a sense of that moment.
Right. Well, first, let me say that, there's a lot more, obviously, but I ended up taking a misdemeanor plea deal so that they would drop those felonies. In taking the misdemeanor plea deal, I had to confess to doing those things. So I had to say that I said, take the shield, which I did not. I had to say that I knew the grounds were restricted, which I did not. And many other things that were not true that were in my plea deal. And that has been one of the most difficult things I've gone through in the last 4 years. It's unbelievably damaging psychologically and spiritually to be forced to confess to something you didn't do.
Right.
But on January 20th of this year, a few weeks ago, Donald Trump took office, and within a few hours pardoned almost every January 6th defendant. And obviously it's a wonderful feeling. I would say that the best part about it is that it basically nullified my plea deal and allowed me to be able to sit here with you today and anyone else and openly say, those are lies. I did not do those things. For 4 years. I had to live with the media relentlessly publishing that I did those things. And they didn't just say he witnessed the crowd taking a shield and shouted, take it, take it. They turned that into he stood outside of the building and encouraged the crowd to attack police officers.
Right.
That's what they turned that into.
Right.
So I've had like hundreds of articles written about me over the last 4 years saying that. And I just had to sit there as it crushed my spirit because I couldn't come out and say that's not true, or I'd be violating my plea deal. And then I would end up having to go to trial again on everything. So, and having, additional charges added for violating.
Right. No, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. You were a political prisoner when all is said and done. I mean, it's just that simple. Here we're running around going Putin, 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 and Viktor Orban, blah, blah, blah. You're the political. We're the ones having political prisoners. It's insane. What inspired you to write to Tucker? I thought that was a lovely story that and it turns out it was an extremely important thing you did.
Yeah. Well, I had appeared on Tucker's show, I think a couple of times before January 6th for WalkAway, to talk about WalkAway. And somehow along the way, I ended up getting his assistant's phone number. And so I was on house arrest, and I started reaching out to media outlets, and I'm not going to name names, but several, prominent cable news channels and shows were basically indicating that they weren't willing to have me on anymore and that they wouldn't talk to me. And I thought to myself, this is crazy, because even if you believe that I did these things that I didn't do, it's still news. And why wouldn't you have me on? It's news. I mean, the left is talking about me every day in the news.
Right.
Why can't I come on and give my side of the story? And so I started to realize, I was like, oh my God, I think I'm being shunned by the conservative media, or at least portions of it. And so I had to spend several weeks, locked up on house arrest, just sort of contemplating what that means. And I decided to sit down and write Tucker a letter, and because I was like, I need people to understand that I'm innocent. Like I didn't do these things. And so I wrote a very detailed, long letter explaining what I was accused of and what the truth was and why I pled guilty to something I didn't do and what I've been through. And I wrote the letter and I put it together, and I called his assistant, and I just said, if I send this to you, will you please give it to him?
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to just put it in the mail and never know, and she said, yes, I will. So I sent it to her, and she gave it to him. And it was true. I mean, it took a while because I think it still ended up kind of in a pile of mail. And I think a week or two passed, and I kind of got to the point where I was like, oh my God, he doesn't care. Like, or
Yeah.
it's the same, you know, he read it and he thinks I'm a bad guy, or, you know, whatever. And all of a sudden one night I was sitting in my apartment on house arrest, staring at my ceiling, and I looked down, and I had a text message that said, Brandon, this is Tucker Carlson. He said, I just read your letter. And he said, I'm deeply disturbed by what I
Mm.
just read. And he was like, this is crazy. My team is going to be reaching out to you. Of course, I would love to share your story.
Wow.
And as
Wow.
soon as my house arrest was over, he kept his promise. And within like a week, I flew to Florida and sat down with him for an hour to
Yeah.
share my story.
That's so amazing. I'm so glad you wrote that letter, and the way you described it too. I could tell just the way you speak. I spent years teaching rhetoric, and I could tell you would have been an A student for sure. You know, you've gone through this wilderness experience, this dark dungeon period, but now true to the hero story, you're rising up, and you're breathing the free air again. What's next for Brandon Strach and the WalkAway movement?
Yeah, so we're since 2018, and even through the last 4 years while I was going through this hell, we've traveled around the country doing events. We put a lot of focus on minority communities like Black, Hispanic, LGBT, etc. Basically, trying to go into the heart of these communities, do events to get people to wake up, think differently, walk away. We talk to college kids. We do educational videos. But people have been telling us for years, like, you really should be strategically focusing your efforts in areas that need it most at that moment. And so I've really seen the value of that. And this year, both New Jersey and Virginia have very important governor's races.
Yes,
And
yes.
yeah. And so I've been trying to tell people too, and I really want people to wrap their heads around this, because I get very, very frustrated with conservatives because, number one, there's always this complacency issue. It's very difficult to get people to get involved. I think we are starting to overcome that.
Right.
But the other piece of it is, and it's two philosophies that I'm asking people to embrace going forward. That one, every year is an election year, and I'll explain that in a moment. And number two, every election is a national election, because
Yes.
what we've done is that, some people get involved because it's the midterms. Most people get involved because it's the presidential general election every 4 years. So it's like, some of the people come out every 2 years to help with the midterms, and then more people come out every 4 years to help with the presidential election. But it's like they disappear in these
They
off
recede.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
but we learned in 2020 what can happen
Yeah.
when just a few governors in a few blue states
Oh God.
decide at the stroke of a pen to sign executive orders to change their election laws,
Yep.
to sway the outcome of the national election in their states, and then that
Yeah.
affects the entire country.
Right.
So we don't get to just be like, oh, well, I don't live in New Jersey, or I don't live in Virginia,
Right.
so I
Right.
don't care. If those governors decide to unethically change their election laws the way that happened in 2020, you're sure going to care who the governors are. So we're going to go in and we're going to get deeply involved in 2021 in these governors races, and go and talk to people in the Black, Hispanic, Asian, Muslim. There's lots of minority demographics in Virginia and New Jersey that could completely sway the outcome of the elections in 2021 in
Oh,
these.
totally. Absolutely.
We're going to go in there and we're going to put a lot of focus on going in there and trying to get as many people to walk away in these states as we possibly can. And so we need people to understand, yes, it's 2021, but this is an election year. It
Yeah.
matters just as much as any other year. And number two, these elections matter just as much as any other national election. So
Yes.
we're going to be putting a lot of focus there. And then, of course, our testimonial campaign, we always want to encourage people to share their walkaway videos, use the walkaway hashtag, join our group on Facebook, hashtag walkaway campaign. Facebook banned the original walkaway campaign that had grown to over 511,000 people. So we've begun again with a new group. We're at about 43,000 plus members. We have a long way to go. But if everyone will join our group, share our videos, contribute your own testimonials, helps us tremendously. And follow us on X and share our content there as well.
I love it. Yeah, all the links are down below, gang. Make sure you get involved. This is amazing stuff. I love the way you're targeting now. So the WalkAway Jersey, WalkAway Virginia. This is amazing. Especially we were talking earlier, you're a New York guy, I'm a Connecticut guy. I mean, this political realignment, particularly the non-white working class, just leaving the Democrats in droves and coming over to a Trumpian Republican Party. The prospects for that, particularly for Connecticut and New Jersey, are huge. And then to the extent that Trump is able to drain that swamp in Northern Virginia, can you imagine that? I mean, if he just gets rid of 1 million jobs there and they all fly away, suddenly Northern Virginia it's fertile ground. We can take this. So
That's right.
Absolutely amazing.
I mean, there's nothing I'm giving up on. You know, people say, why do you do events in California? California is hopeless. I don't think anything's hopeless.
No,
if
I
things
agree.
were hopeless, I just wouldn't do this work at all.
I agree.
You know,
I agree. Yeah, definitely California, especially after those fires. I mean, absolutely. I think they're more red pilled than ever. You know, Brent, I got to say, we throw around the term hero a lot, but it is not trite when your very life reflects the mythical hero's journey. You've gone from, shall we say, the placidity of the Shire to the fires of Mordor, and now you are free and you are now stronger than ever. And that means, as with every hero's journey, the best is yet to come. And we could not be more excited for what we're about, all of us, what we're about to see you do. You're amazing, Brandon. You always have friends and fans here. So please come back anytime you like.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brandon.